When did saying yes change your life unexpectedly? I was 29 and living like a hermit. After my ex-girlfriend Vanessa cleaned out our joint account and disappeared with my best friend, I'd sworn off people entirely. My routine was bulletproof. Work my warehouse job, grab groceries, go home to my studio apartment, repeat. No parties, no dates, no chances for anyone to screw me over again. That Tuesday started like any other. I was leaving the grocery store when this old woman dropped her bag in the parking lot. Oranges rolled everywhere, her prescription bottles scattered across the asphalt. Any normal person would help, but I'd trained myself to keep walking. Other people's problems weren't mine anymore, but something about the way she just stood there staring at the mess with these defeated eyes made me stop. Need some help? I heard myself ask. Her face lit up. Oh, bless you. My arthritis makes it so hard to bend down. Her name was Mrs. Kowalski, and as I gathered her things, she wouldn't stop talking. About her late husband, her garden, how her granddaughter lived in California and never called. I nodded politely, ready to escape. Then she said something that changed everything. You seem like such a nice young man. Would you like to come to dinner Friday? I'm making too much food anyway, and I could use the company. Every instinct screamed no. This was exactly how people got under your skin, made you care, then left. But looking at her hopeful smile, I found myself saying, Sure, Mrs. Kowalski. That sounds nice. Friday arrived. I almost didn't go. Stood outside her little house for 10 minutes, keys in hand, ready to drive away. But I'd given my word. Mrs. Kowalski's house was like stepping into a time capsule. Doilies everywhere, photos covering every surface, the smell of something amazing cooking. She ushered me in like I was family. Oh, good, you're early, she said. Someone I want you to meet. My stomach dropped. She'd set me up. I should have known. That's when I heard the voice from the kitchen. Grandma, do you need help with... A woman appeared in the doorway, and I swear time stopped. Long, dark hair, paint-stained fingers, eyes like warm honey. She was holding a wooden spoon and had flour on her cheek. This is my granddaughter, Zoe, Mrs. Kowalski beamed. She flew in from California yesterday. Zoe, this is the sweet boy who helped me in the parking lot. Zoe extended her hand. The grocery store hero Grandma hasn't stopped talking about. Her smile was genuine, no agenda behind it. When our hands touched, something electric shot up my arm. Just being decent, I managed. That's rarer than you think, she said, holding my gaze. Dinner was supposed to be awkward. Instead, it was the best evening I'd had in years. Zoe was an art teacher who'd come home because Mrs. Kowalski had fallen and hadn't told anyone. She was funny, sharp, and actually listened when I talked. So you restore vintage motorcycles as a hobby? She asked, leaning forward. Used to. Haven't touched one in 2 years. Why not? I shrugged. Lost interest, I guess. But the truth was, Vanessa had called it a waste of money. Said I was too old to play with toys. After dinner, Zoe walked me to my car. Grandma's having a procedure next week, she said. I'll be staying to help her recover. Would you maybe want to... Yes, I said before she could finish. She laughed. You don't even know what I was going to ask. Doesn't matter. The answer's yes. Over the next month, I said yes to everything. Coffee dates while Mrs. Kowalski napped. Trips to art supply stores. Helping Zoe reorganize the garage. Each yes felt like coming back to life. Then Zoe found my old motorcycle in Mrs. Kowalski's garage. Why is there a beautiful vintage Triumph rotting under a tarp? She demanded, her hands on her hips. I'd stored it there after Vanessa's ultimatum. Mrs. Kowalski had offered her garage when I mentioned needing space. The bike had been my dad's before he died. A 1969 Bonneville he'd restored himself, teaching me everything about engines, patience, and taking pride in your work. Long story, I said, not wanting to explain how Vanessa had made me choose between her and my stupid hobby. Zoe pulled off the tarp completely, revealing the Triumph in all its neglected glory. Dust covered the chrome, but underneath the bones were still beautiful. This is incredible, she breathed, running her fingers along the tank. Look at these lines, the craftsmanship. How could you abandon something this amazing? Someone convinced me it was a waste of time. Her eyes flashed. Someone was an idiot. That weekend, she convinced me to start working on it again. We spread tools across Mrs. Kowalski's driveway while she supervised from her lawn chair, bringing us lemonade and unsolicited advice about young love. I don't know anything about engines, Zoe admitted, holding a wrench like it might bite her. That's okay. You can hand me tools and look pretty doing it. She threw a shop rag at my head. Sexist pig. But she was laughing, and so was I. For the first time in years, I was laughing. Working on the bike together became our routine. Zoe would sketch while I tinkered, occasionally asking questions about what I was doing. She had this way of making everything seem interesting, like my boring explanations of carburetors were fascinating lectures. Tell me about this part, she'd say, pointing to the engine. That's the primary drive. It transfers power from the crankshaft to the transmission. And you rebuilt it yourself? With my dad. He taught me that every part has a purpose, and if you respect the machine, it'll respect you back. She'd nod seriously, like I was sharing ancient wisdom instead of basic mechanics. One afternoon, she surprised me with a drawing she'd made of me working on the engine, completely focused, a small smile on my face. You look happy here, she said, really happy. Not like the polite, careful version of yourself you usually are. She was right. Around the bike, around her, I felt like myself again. The person I'd been before Vanessa convinced me I was selfish for having interests that didn't revolve around her. Mrs. Kowalski recovered from her procedure beautifully, but Zoe kept finding reasons to stay. Her art teaching job in California was on summer break. Her grandmother needed help with yard work. Her grandmother's friend down the street needed help moving furniture. I knew she was making excuses, and I was grateful for every single one. The first time I kissed her was under the hood of the Triumph. She was holding a flashlight while I adjusted the timing, and when I looked up, she was staring at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. Just, you're really good at this. Passionate about it. It's attractive." "Attractive?" "Very." I straightened up, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. "Zoe." "Yes?" Instead of answering, I kissed her. She dropped the flashlight, and it rolled under the bike, casting crazy shadows on the garage walls. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "I've been wanting to do that for weeks," I admitted. "Only weeks?" she teased. "I've been thinking about it since dinner that first night." 3 weeks later, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "My summer break ends in 2 weeks," she said quietly. We were sitting on Mrs. Kowalski's porch watching fireflies. "I have to go back to California." My chest tightened. "Right, of course. Unless," I looked at her. "Unless what?" "Unless you want to say yes to something crazy." My heart started hammering. "What kind of crazy?" She turned to face me completely. "Come with me. To California. I know it sounds insane. We've only known each other 6 weeks, but these have been the best 6 weeks of my life. And I hope, you feel the same way." Every rational thought in my head screamed no. I had a job here, an apartment, a routine that kept me safe from getting hurt again. Moving across the country for someone I'd known 6 weeks was exactly the kind of impulsive decision that led to disaster. But looking at her face, hopeful and terrified at the same time, I realized something important. The safe life I'd built wasn't really living at all. It was just existing. "Yes," I said. Her face lit up like sunrise. "Really?" "Really, but I have conditions." "Name them." "The bike comes with us, and I want to drive it there." She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Road trip it is. Those next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. I gave notice at the warehouse, something I should have done years ago. The job had been slowly crushing my soul, but I'd been too scared to admit it. My supervisor barely looked up when I told him. 2 weeks? He grunted. "Fine, don't expect a reference." I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt free. I found someone to take over my apartment lease, sold most of my furniture, and spent every spare moment getting the Triumph Road ready. The bike hadn't run in 2 years, but working on it with Zoe had reminded me why I loved it so much. Mrs. Kowalski was thrilled by our plan, though she pretended to be scandalized. "In my day, young ladies didn't run off with strange men," she said, while packing us enough food for a month-long journey. "In your day, you met Grandpa at a dance and married him 3 months later," Zoe pointed out. "That was different. We were properly chaperoned," but she hugged me tight before we left. "You take care of my girl," she whispered, "and let her take care of you." The day before we left, my mom called. I hadn't spoken to her in months, another casualty of my self-imposed isolation. "I heard from Mrs. Henderson that you're moving to California," she said. "With a girl?" "Yeah, Mom. Her name's Zoe. And you're driving that motorcycle your father left you?" "Yeah." There was a long pause. "He would have loved that, you know. Taking a cross-country trip on the Bonnie. He always talked about doing it himself." "I know. Be careful, sweetheart, and I'm proud of you for taking a chance again." "I hadn't expected that." "Thanks, Mom. Bring her to meet me when you can, okay? Any girl who got you back on that bike must be special." The drive to California took 4 days. 4 perfect days of winding roads, small-town diners, and Zoe's arms around my waist as we flew down highways together. She'd never been on a motorcycle before, but she took to it like she'd been born to ride. "This is incredible," she shouted over the wind on our first day. "I feel so free." At night, we'd find cheap motels and lie in bed talking about everything, our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. She told me about her ex-fiancé, Cameron, who'd crushed her confidence by calling her art cute little doodles and suggesting she find a more practical career. "He wanted me to be a dental hygienist," she said, laughing bitterly. "Said art was a nice hobby, but not a real job." I told her about Vanessa, about how she'd slowly convinced me that my interests were childish and my ambitions were unrealistic, how she'd made me feel guilty for spending money on bike parts or taking weekends to work on the Triumph. She said I cared more about a piece of metal than about her, I said. "And you believed that?" After 2 years of hearing it, yeah. I started to think maybe she was right. Maybe I was being selfish. Zoe propped herself up on her elbow, looking at me seriously. "You know what's selfish? Asking someone to give up the things that make them happy. Demanding they become smaller, so you can feel bigger. We both picked people who made us smaller," I said. "Yeah, but that's over now. Promise? Promise." California was everything I'd expected, and nothing like I'd imagined. Zoe's apartment was a tiny studio in a neighborhood where million-dollar houses sat next to taco trucks. Her art filled every wall, paintings so beautiful they took my breath away. "You didn't tell me you were this good?" I said, studying a canvas that captured the exact color of Midwest summer sky. She blushed. "Cameron used to say." "Cameron was a blind idiot," I cut her off. "These are incredible." Her landlord was less thrilled about my arrival. "Lee says 1 occupant," he said when we explained the situation. "I'll pay extra," I offered. "You got a job? I'll find one." He looked skeptical, but agreed to let me stay temporarily while we figured things out. Finding work was easier than I'd expected. My warehouse experience translated to a job at a motorcycle restoration shop, something I'd never even considered before. The owner, a gruff guy named Rico, took one look at my triumph and hired me on the spot. Anyone who can keep a 69 Bonnie running this smooth knows what they're doing, he said. You restore this yourself? With my dad. He taught me everything. Your dad sounds like a smart man. When can you start? Rico's shop was everything I'd dreamed of but never dared to pursue. Classic bikes in various stages of restoration filled the workspace. Harleys, Triumphs, Nortons, even a few rare Indians. Rico had been in business for 30 years, building a reputation for meticulous work and fair prices. Rule number 1, he told me on my first day. We don't just fix bikes here, we bring them back to life. Every machine that comes through that door was someone's dream once. Our job is to make it their dream again. For the first time in my adult life, I looked forward to going to work. Rico became a mentor, teaching me advanced restoration techniques and introducing me to collectors who paid serious money for quality work. Within 3 months, I was making more than I'd ever made at the warehouse. You got good hands, Rico said, watching me rebuild a shovel-head engine. And patience. Most guys your age want to rush everything, but you understand that good work takes time. My relationship with Zoe deepened, too. Living in 400 square feet forced us to learn each other's habits quickly. She was messy but organized. Paint tubes everywhere, but she always knew exactly where everything was. I was neat but inflexible. Everything in its place, schedules kept religiously. You realize you organize your tools by size and function, she said one morning, watching me arrange my motorcycle gear. Is that bad? It's adorable. Very type A for someone who just uprooted his entire life on a whim. It wasn't a whim. It was the most carefully considered, spontaneous decision of my life. We found a bigger apartment together after 6 months, one with a garage where I could work on bikes in the evenings. Zoe converted the spare bedroom into an art studio, finally having space to work on larger canvases. Our routines blended naturally. I'd come home covered in grease. She'd come home covered in paint. We'd shower, cook dinner together, then retreat to our respective creative spaces. She'd paint while I worked, and we'd talk about our days, our plans, our future. Everything felt possible. The first fight we had was about money. I wanted to contribute equally to everything, but Zoe made more as a teacher than I did starting out at Rico's. It's not about keeping score, she said after I insisted on paying more than my fair share of rent. It is to me. I don't want to be one of those guys who lets his girlfriend support him. One of what guys? Guys who accept help from people who love them? Guys who take advantage. She stopped painting and looked at me directly. Is that what Cameron did? Take advantage? No. Cameron had money. His family owned 3 dental practices, but he made sure I knew I was costing him by not contributing more financially. I'm not Cameron, and you're not your ex. Can we agree to split things fairly without you punishing yourself for needing time to build your career? It took me a while to accept that fair didn't always mean equal, but Zoe had a way of making her points without making me feel smaller. 6 months after we arrived, Zoe got news that changed everything again. The school district offered me a permanent position, she said, waving a letter. Head of the art department, full benefits, tenure track, the works. I swept her up and spun her around. That's incredible, you deserve this. The position came with a significant raise and the respect she'd been craving, but that night she seemed quiet. Almost sad. What's wrong? I asked. I thought you wanted this job. I do. It's just, it makes everything real, you know? Permanent. What if you change your mind about us? About this life? I understood her fear. We'd both been left before, both had our dreams crushed by people who were supposed to love us. But this felt different. We felt different together. I'm not changing my mind, I said. In fact, I have a question for you. Her eyes widened as I dropped to one knee beside our bed. I'd been carrying the ring for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't much. A simple sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, but it had caught my eye in a vintage shop because it reminded me of her paintings. I know it's only been 8 months since we met. I know this all happened fast, but every day with you feels like a gift I don't deserve. Will you say yes to marrying me? She was crying and laughing and nodding all at once. Yes, of course, yes. Even though I picked out the ring without you? Especially because you picked it out without me. It's perfect. It's exactly what I would have chosen. Planning the wedding became our obsession for the next 6 months. We wanted something small but meaningful, somewhere that honored both our backgrounds and our new life together. Mrs. Kowalski settled the debate by announcing that the wedding would be in her backyard. I have the most beautiful rose garden in 3 counties, she declared during one of our phone calls. And I'll be damned if my granddaughter gets married anywhere else. She'd flown out to California twice to visit, falling in love with our life there, but insisting the wedding had to be in her garden among her prize-winning roses. The ceremony was perfect. Small, just our families and closest friends, but full of love. My mom walked me down the aisle since Dad wasn't there to do it. She'd flown out 2 weeks early to help with preparations and to get to know Zoe properly. I like her, she told me the night before the wedding. She looks at you the way your father used to look at his bikes, like you're something precious that needs to be handled with care. Rico closed the shop for a week so he could attend the wedding and give Zoe away, since her father had passed when she was young. You're like the son I never had, he said, embarrassing us both. Take care of this girl, and don't you dare move back east permanently. I'm not training another mechanic from scratch. Our families meshed better than I dared hope. My brother, who I'd barely spoken to since Dad's funeral, admitted he'd been worried about me for years but hadn't known how to help. You look different, he said at the reception. Happy, like yourself again. I feel like myself again. Good. Dad would have loved Zoe, and he would have been proud of you for taking the risk. Mom cried during the ceremony, clutching a photo of Dad that she'd brought along. He would have been so proud, she whispered. You found someone who loves all of you, not just the convenient parts. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, learning to share space completely, to communicate about money and dreams and all the mundane stuff that trips up couples. But we'd both been alone long enough to appreciate having someone to come home to. Marriage is weird, Zoe said 6 months in, as we painted our bedroom together. Good weird or bad weird? Good weird. Like, I can't imagine not knowing what you're thinking about, or not being able to tell you about my day, but also weird that we just decided to do this forever. Having second thoughts? Never. Just marveling at how right it feels. Zoe's art started selling. A gallery downtown featured her work in a group show, and 3 paintings sold opening night. She came home with a check and a bottle of champagne, floating on air. I can't believe people want to buy my paintings, she said. I can. They're extraordinary. You're extraordinary. The gallery owner, a sharp woman named Lydia, took Zoe under her wing. She connected her with collectors, helped her price her work appropriately, and started featuring her pieces regularly. You have a gift, Lydia told her. But more than that, you have something to say. Your work has depth and honesty that's rare in emerging artists. The motorcycle restoration business grew too. Rico started talking about retiring, hinting that I might want to take over the shop. The idea terrified and excited me in equal measure. I'm not getting any younger, he said one afternoon, watching me finish a particularly challenging restoration. And I can't think of anyone I'd rather pass this place on to. Rico, I can't afford to buy you out. Who said anything about buying? I'm talking about earning. You work for me another 5 years, learn everything I can teach you, and we'll work out terms that make sense for both of us. The conversation planted a seed that grew steadily. I started paying more attention to the business side of the shop, learning about suppliers, customer relationships, and the financial aspects I'd always left to Rico. 2 years after our wedding, Zoe found me in the garage, staring at the Triumph I'd restored to perfection. Thinking about selling her? She asked. Never. Just remembering. Remembering what? How you found her under that tarp. How you convinced me to start working on her again. How that led to everything else. She wrapped her arms around me from behind. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That parking lot. How you almost didn't help Grandma. How I almost didn't come home that weekend. How many tiny choices had to align perfectly for us to meet. Scary when you think about it that way. Not scary. Magical. 3 years in, Zoe started talking about kids. At first, the idea terrified me. What if I was like my dad in his worst moments, distant and critical? What if I passed down all my damage instead of the good parts? You're nothing like him, Zoe said when I voiced these fears. Look how you treat your nephew when he visits. Look how you are with the neighbor kids when they come to watch you work on bikes. You're going to be an amazing father. But what if I'm not? What if I screw them up the way I was screwed up? Then we'll figure it out together. That's what marriage is, figuring it out together. We started trying 6 months later. It took a year of hopes and disappointments before we got the positive test. I found Zoe crying in the bathroom, holding the test with shaking hands. Happy tears? I asked. The happiest. The pregnancy was rough at first. Zoe was sick constantly, and I felt helpless watching her suffer. But by the second trimester, she was glowing with health and excitement. Feel this, she said one evening, grabbing my hand and placing it on her belly. The baby kicked, and I felt like my heart might explode. Strong kid, I said. Wonder where they get that from. We painted the nursery together. Soft yellow walls since we'd decided to be surprised about the gender. Zoe created a mural of motorcycles and paintbrushes dancing together, whimsical and beautiful. Mrs. Kowalski flew out for the last month of pregnancy, determined to help with everything. She cooked enough food to feed a small army and regaled us with stories of childbirth from her generation. In my day, fathers waited in the hallway, she said, but I'm glad times have changed. Babies need their daddies from the very beginning. Our son was born on a Tuesday, exactly 5 years after I'd said yes to helping Mrs. Kowalski in that parking lot. He had Zoe's eyes and my stubborn chin, and the moment I held him, every wall I'd built around my heart crumbled completely. He's perfect, I whispered, afraid to speak too loudly in case this was all a dream. Just like his daddy, Zoe said, exhausted but glowing. We named him Owen, after my father. It felt right, honoring the man who'd taught me to work with my hands and find pride in craftsmanship, even if he'd struggled with showing emotion. Mrs. Kowalski declared herself the honorary grandmother and spent 2 weeks spoiling us all. She taught me how to change diapers, burp a baby, and recognize different types of cries. You're a natural, she said, watching me rock Owen to sleep. Some men are afraid of babies, but you take to it like you were born for this. I never thought I wanted kids. That's because you were protecting yourself. But this little one broke through all those walls, didn't he? Rico officially retired when Owen turned 1, selling me the shop for a fraction of what it was worth. Just promise me you'll keep the name, he said during our final paperwork. Rico's Custom Motorcycles has a nice ring to it. I changed it to Rico and Sons Custom Motorcycles, planning for the future. Sons plural? Zoe asked when she saw the new sign. Optimistic thinking. The business thrived under my ownership. Word spread about our quality work, and soon we had customers driving in from 3 states away. I hired 2 employees, then 4, then 6. Each new hire felt like validation that I'd built something real and valuable. Zoe's art career exploded too. She had her first solo show when Owen was 18 months old, selling every piece on opening night. The local art magazine featured her on the cover with the headline, "Local Teacher Becomes Rising Star." "I keep thinking someone's going to realize I don't know what I'm doing," she confided the night before the opening. "Imposter syndrome is normal, but you belong here. Your work speaks to people." The show was a triumph. Collectors, critics, and art lovers filled the gallery, and Zoe sold everything, including 3 commissioned pieces. Watching her accept congratulations, confident and radiant, I felt so proud I could barely stand it. When our daughter was born 2 years later, we felt like the luckiest people alive. She had my dark hair and Zoe's artistic eye, already reaching for paintbrushes before she could walk properly. We named her Grace, after Mrs. Kowalski, whose full name was Grace Catherine Kowalski. The old woman cried when we told her during a video call. "You didn't have to do that," she said through tears. "Yes, we did," Zoe replied. "You brought us together. Everything good in our lives traces back to you." Mrs. Kowalski visited every Christmas after that, watching our children grow with the pride of a true grandmother. She never remarried after her husband died, but she said our family filled the loneliness in her heart. The kids adored her. Owen would show off his toy motorcycles and explain how engines worked with the seriousness of a professor. Grace would paint pictures especially for her great-grandmother, masterpieces that Mrs. Kowalski displayed prominently on her refrigerator. "You know," she said during one visit, watching Owen help me tune up the Triumph while Grace painted nearby, "I prayed for years for my Zoe to find someone good. Never occurred to me that the answer to my prayer would be helping me pick up oranges in a parking lot. Funny how life works," I said. "Not funny, mysterious, beautiful, worth waiting for." The business continued growing. By Owen's 5th birthday, we'd outgrown the original shop and moved to a larger facility. I added a showroom featuring restored bikes for sale and started offering motorcycle maintenance classes for enthusiasts. "You're building something special here," said a customer who'd driven from Arizona for a restoration. "This isn't just a shop, it's like a museum and a school and a community center all rolled into one." That's when I realized what I'd really created. Not just a business, but a place where people came to connect with their passions, to learn, to share stories about their bikes and their dreams. Zoe's teaching evolved too. The school district promoted her to arts coordinator for all elementary schools, and she started a program bringing professional artists into classrooms. Her own gallery shows became annual events that collectors anticipated eagerly. "I never imagined I could have both," she said one evening as we watched the kids play in our backyard. "A teaching career and a gallery career. For so long, Cameron made me think I had to choose." Cameron was wrong about everything. Almost everything. He was right about one thing. Art isn't a practical career, but that's what makes it beautiful. When Owen turned 7, he started asking to help in the shop. I gave him simple tasks, organizing tools, cleaning parts, holding flashlights, but his natural understanding of how things worked amazed me. "Why does this part go here, Dad?" he asked, pointing to a carburetor component. I explained fuel mixture and airflow, expecting him to get bored. Instead, he asked follow-up questions that showed he was really listening, really thinking. "He's got your brain," Zoe observed, watching us work together. "And your curiosity." Grace, meanwhile, was developing into a serious artist. Her paintings at age 5 showed perspective and color theory that shouldn't have been possible at her age. Art teachers at school called her prodigious. "Should we get her special lessons?" I asked Zoe. "Let's just give her materials and space and see what happens. Forced development can kill natural talent." Instead, we converted the garage loft into a proper studio for Grace, while keeping the ground level for motorcycle work. The kids would often work alongside us, Owen learning about engines, Grace painting everything she saw. Those were golden years. The business stable and growing, Zoe's art career flourishing, the kids healthy and happy. I'd catch myself sometimes, amazed at how completely my life had transformed from that lonely, bitter person I'd been before the parking lot. But life has a way of testing happiness just when you think you've figured everything out. The call came on a Wednesday morning. Mrs. Kowalski had suffered a stroke and was in intensive care. Zoe booked the first flight home, leaving me with the kids and a shop full of customers. For 2 weeks, we lived in limbo. Daily updates from the hospital, video calls where Mrs. Kowalski couldn't speak clearly, but squeezed Zoe's hand to show she understood. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but the recovery would be long and difficult. "I need to stay longer," Zoe said during one of our nightly calls. "She needs more help than I realized. The house is falling apart. Her finances are a mess and she's scared." "How much longer?" "I don't know. Maybe a lot longer. Maybe, what if we moved back? At least for a while?" The idea should have terrified me. We'd built our entire life in California, our careers, our home, our community. But looking at Owen and Grace, I realized something important. "What do you think, guys?" I asked them. "Want to go live near Great-Grandma Kowalski for a while?" Owen's eyes lit up. "Could I go to the same school Mom went to?" Grace nodded seriously. "Great-Grandma needs us." That settled it. We began planning the biggest move of our lives. Rico had connections in the Midwest who might help me start a new shop. Several customers offered to write recommendations. Zoe's principal, devastated to lose her, nonetheless promised glowing references. "You're doing the right thing," Rico said as I explained our plans. "Family comes first. And honestly, the Midwest could use someone with your skills." Selling the house and shop was emotional, but surprisingly smooth. The new owner of Rico & Sons was a former customer who'd always admired our work. He kept all our employees and promised to maintain our standards. Mrs. Kowalski recovered enough to be released from the hospital just as we arrived. Her speech was slurred and her left side weak, but her mind was sharp, and her relief at having us nearby was obvious. "You came home," she whispered when she saw the kids. "We all came home," Owen corrected, hugging her carefully. "Finding a house near Mrs. Kowalski's took months. We wanted something with space for the kids to play, and room for me to set up a shop. Eventually, we found an old farmhouse with a huge garage and 3 acres of land. It needs work," the realtor warned. "That's okay," I said. "We like projects." Setting up the new business was harder than I'd expected. Building a customer base from scratch, establishing relationships with suppliers, learning local regulations. But slowly, word spread about the guy from California who really knew vintage motorcycles. My first big break came when a collector brought me a 1948 Indian Chief that had been sitting in a barn for 30 years. The restoration took 6 months and cost more than most people's cars, but when it was finished, it was museum quality. Photos of the Indian appeared in motorcycle magazines, and suddenly my phone was ringing constantly. Collectors, dealers, and enthusiasts from across the region wanted to know about this new shop in the Midwest. Zoe found her footing too. The local school district snapped her up as arts coordinator, and she started a weekend program at the community center. Her first gallery show in our new town sold out completely. "It's different here," she said after the opening. "More personal. People aren't just buying art, they're investing in their neighbor's dream." The kids thrived. Owen joined the school's robotics team and spent every afternoon in my shop, learning advanced restoration techniques. Grace's art teacher called her the most naturally gifted student I've ever encountered and arranged for her to take classes at the local college. Mrs. Kowalski's recovery was slow but steady. Physical therapy helped her regain most of her strength, and having us nearby gave her purpose and joy. She spent most afternoons at our house, supervising homework and sharing stories about the old days. "I never thought I'd live to see my great-grandchildren grow up," she said one evening, watching Owen and Grace play in the yard. "Don't talk like that. You've got years left." "Maybe. But even if I didn't, I've seen enough. I've seen love win. I've seen my Zoe happy. I've seen you become the man you were always meant to be." 3 years after our move, the business was thriving beyond my wildest expectations. We'd grown from me working alone to a staff of 8, with a waiting list for restoration stretching 6 months. Owen, now 13, was officially my apprentice. His understanding of mechanical systems was extraordinary, and his patience with detail work reminded me of my father at his best. "Think I'll take over the shop someday?" he asked one afternoon, as we worked on a particularly challenging Triumph rebuild. "Do you want to?" He considered this seriously. "Yeah, but I also want to design new bikes. Electric ones, maybe. Like, what if we could build electric motorcycles that looked classic but had modern technology?" "That's not a bad idea. Innovation built on tradition." Grace, now 11, was preparing for her first solo art show. Her paintings had evolved into complex works that captured emotion and movement in ways that stunned everyone who saw them. "She's gifted beyond her years," said the gallery owner. "But more than that, she has something important to say. Art this honest is rare at any age." Watching my children develop their talents, surrounded by love and encouragement instead of criticism and doubt, felt like healing something broken in myself. The 4th winter after our move was harsh. Mrs. Kowalski caught pneumonia and spent 2 weeks in the hospital. We thought we might lose her, but she fought back with characteristic stubbornness. "Not ready yet," she whispered when I visited. "Still got things to see." She lived to see Owen win the state championship in robotics and Grace's solo show receive a standing ovation. She lived to see Zoe's art featured in a national magazine and my business profiled in a motorcycle industry publication. "I'm proud of what you've all become," she said during Christmas dinner that year. "But mostly, I'm proud that you found each other. Love like yours changes the world, one family at a time." Last month, Mrs. Kowalski passed away peacefully in her sleep at 89. We found her in her favorite chair, surrounded by photos of our family, a slight smile on her face. The funeral filled the church and overflowed into the parking lot. 3 generations of people whose lives she'd touched came to pay respects. But the most moving moment was when Owen and Grace stood up to speak about their great-grandmother. "She taught us that love is action," Owen said, "that helping someone pick up groceries can change everything. She showed us that families aren't just the people you're born to," Grace added. "They're the people who choose to love you." In her will, she left us the house where Zoe and I had met, along with a letter. "Thank you for proving that there are still good people in this world," she wrote. "Thank you for saying yes to an old lady who just needed a friend. Thank you for showing me that love stories aren't just for young people. Sometimes they're for anyone brave enough to believe in second chances." We decided to keep her house as a workshop and gallery space. Owen wants to use it for his electric motorcycle designs when he's older. Grace wants to display community art projects there. Zoe wants to offer painting classes for kids who can't afford art supplies. "It feels right," Zoe said as we walked through the empty rooms. Grandma's house bringing people together, creating new connections. Now, 15 years after that Tuesday in the grocery store parking lot, I watch my son work beside me in the shop, learning the same skills my father taught me. He's developing his own ideas about innovation and tradition, dreaming bigger than I ever dared. My daughter paints in the converted garage loft, creating works that will someday hang in galleries across the country. She has her mother's eye for beauty, and her great-grandmother's understanding of human nature. Zoe teaches at 3 different schools now, bringing art to kids who need it most. Her own paintings sell as fast as she can create them, and she's been approached about a book deal for her teaching methods. People ask me sometimes what I've learned from all this. Here's what I know. We're all one yes away from a completely different life. One moment of choosing connection over isolation, kindness over indifference, hope over fear. That Tuesday in the parking lot, I had a choice. I could have kept walking, stayed safe in my bubble of hurt and mistrust. I could have remained the bitter, lonely man that Vanessa had left behind. Instead, I stopped to help someone who needed it. That single yes led to everything I treasure most. My wife, my children, my career, my purpose. It led to becoming the man I was always meant to be. The father I'd never had. The husband I'd never thought I could become. It led to understanding that love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose every day in small moments and big decisions. It's saying yes when it would be easier to say no. It's stopping when it would be simpler to keep walking. So when life asks you a question, when someone needs help, when an opportunity scares you because it matters too much, say yes. You never know what door you might be opening, what life you might be stepping into, what love you might be inviting in. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of courage. Sometimes helping someone pick up oranges in a parking lot changes everything. Sometimes saying yes is the beginning of your real life. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, that yes echoes through generations, creating a legacy of love that started with choosing to care when it would have been easier to walk away. That's when saying yes changed my life unexpectedly, and I'd make the same choice again in a heartbeat, knowing now what it led to. Not just happiness, but purpose. Not just love, but the chance to pass that love forward to the next generation. The circle continues. Owen helps elderly neighbors with yard work. Grace teaches art to younger kids at the community center. They've learned the lesson Mrs. Kowalski taught me all those years ago, that kindness is contagious, that helping others helps yourself, that saying yes to love changes everything. Sometimes I still drive the Triumph on Sunday mornings, taking the long way through town, remembering that scared, angry man I used to be. But mostly, I'm too busy living the life that yes created to spend much time looking backward. The future is too bright, too full of possibility, too rich with love to waste time on regrets. And it all started with 3 simple words in a grocery store parking lot. Need some help? The answer, I've learned, is always yes.